Now, I must make a confession. Personally, I have something of a reputation for letting images take all the glory when it comes to colour choices. I've worked with many photographers over my career, and that really taught me that with brand identity, there can be a risk of colours you choose as the designer clashing with colours that will be present in the imagery a photographer takes. For that reason, in a project where you know a lot of photography will be featured, there can be a real advantage in choosing neutral tones that are unlikely to clash or to skew the imagery that's being used. So I'll admit I'm biased. I might allow images to take a little more control of my colour palettes than I should, but it's worked wonderfully for me so far. So one quick technique I'm going to share with you that I think works really well requires you to just look through the images you've saved out for this project, which we did in a previous lesson, and you're going to drop a few of them onto the page. Be conscious of dropping some that perhaps have similar colour tones. And you don't have to be too careful. We can swap and change this, but once you have those on the page, we're going to use the colour dropper to help you pick out a complementary palette. So if you open up the colour palette worksheet in this starting point template that I've shared, if you hit the W key, you'll see that toggles you in InDesign between views, between the preview view, which hides any of your guidelines or grids, and this regular view that shows you all of those formatting features. And something it now reveals are the placeholders I've included for your images. So you can see these green outlines here. There's a little X in the middle. So I'm going to do that using Bridge. And in Bridge, another nice feature is that you can queue up a number of images. So I'm doing that just off screen. And you drag and drop, and you don't drag into these placeholders yet. You can just release anywhere on the page, and it queues up your palette. So you can see there's a little number 6 in brackets, and that means I've got 6 images to place, and you can see this little preview thumbnail. And start placing those into these placeholders. Another useful shortcut, and if you drag to select all of those image frames, and you use the shortcut Control or Command, Shift, Alt or Option and C. And what that does is frame fitting. You can do that manually over here, and it will fill the frame proportionately. So a nice way to drop your images in and straight away get them to sit within those frames as you wish them to. And if you hover over the center of the frame until you see this little hand icon appear on your cursor, you can click, and that now shows you the actual image behind the aperture. So you can see this here was a vertical image, and the aperture is hiding anything that fits outside that image frame that we've selected. So you can dive pretty deep into this in InDesign, but for our purposes in this lesson, this is more than enough for you to fine-tune the positioning of your images if you're not happy with it. If you deselect by just clicking anywhere off the page and ensuring that you have the selection tool live. If you click on any of your image frames, I'm going to click this one on the bottom right, you can see these little selection handles around the edge, and as you'd expect, dragging these allows you to reposition the aperture. If you then hit the fill frame proportionately button, you can stretch the image to fill that new aperture. You could hover in the center to get those control handles again, and you could drag. You can hold shift to constrain it from jumping out of alignment while you do that. So using those tools, although at the moment we're focusing just on the color palette, that's going to be really helpful if you're using InDesign for the first time to help you work with images and understand the difference between the underlying image. You can see the edges outlined in magenta there, and the aperture, the frame that you're filling that content within. So color palette, I'm just going to put this back for now, and you see these handy little guides pop up in InDesign to show you when things are aligned correctly. And what we're looking to do is pick some colors that work well, and by default they're going to complement these images because they're actually sourced from the images. And this is kind of a useful tip, a shortcut to quickly arrive at a color palette, particularly for a piece you're just throwing together for your portfolio, and to make sure everything really harmonizes well. So I suggest bringing up the eyedropper tool, and the shortcut for that is I, and click over, and you want the pipette on the end of that eyedropper to be hovering over the color you'd like to sample. So I'm going to take this sandy color up here, and you can see that's now been assigned as the primary color in my palette. And what we want to do now is drop the pipette onto one of these little circles I've created, and that is going to color the circle. And if you need to create more of these little circular pins, I call them, just take your selection tool. So the shortcut for that is of course V, and as you drag, hold the Alt key, and you'll see a little duplicate icon come up in your cursor, and you can drag that and you can duplicate those pins as many times as you need. So I'm going to take that first pin and I'm going to drop it just on the edge here of the image I sampled it from. I'll then click somewhere on the page to deselect, hit the I key to get our eyedropper back up again, and I'm going to look for a nice off grey. This is something that might work nicely on a dark background. I'm going to click there to sample that one and drop it onto this circle here. Again, V for selection tool, and I'll drag it just here to remind myself which image it's come from. Deselect by clicking anywhere off the page, and again let's look for another color, this time maybe a nice dark brown. That's maybe too dark. I'm going to hit I again. Let's reselect up here. Still looking a little too dark. And you can do this, you can keep sampling until, there we are, the color you see that's popped up in your palette is what you're looking for. And I'll drop that in there. Selection tool, and drag it in place. And using this method, you can keep going, picking anything from 3 to 6, I think would be the maximum, different colors that are actually sourced from the artwork you'll be using in the brochure. So that's a great way to ensure it's going to be harmonious. I'll jump ahead in this video. So there's my final selection of 5. And what you want to do now with the selection tool active is click and then shift or control click to gather up all of your pins. And you want to open the swatches panel. It's tucked away under window if you don't have that open in your workspace. And at the bottom you'll see a little folder icon which says new color group as you hover over it. So click on new color group, and you want to ensure you can give it a name if you like. I'm going to call mine Brochure, and ensure it's creating this color group from the selected page items. So that's what we have selected on the screen here. Click OK, and here's your color palette ready to be used. So you might notice there's a 6th color, this light gray, and that's simply the stroke I have surrounding the pins here to separate them. So you're now hopefully armed with a color palette you'll be able to use, and let's briefly show you how this might be applied before we jump ahead to the next lesson. So on this page here we've got a off-white background. Let's see how that looks using one of our off-white colors we've just selected. So that gives the background that assigned color.
Then perhaps the text itself, and just make sure you either hit the J key or you click this button here to make sure you're looking at the color for the text and not the bounding boxes. And we could use this, which is almost a bluey grey. You could, if you wanted, maybe just for this heading, you could even try using this darker brown. And as you go through the document and you start applying the colors you've picked out in that palette, you should just find there's something really nice and harmonious about them, the way they come together, particularly when you then place your images alongside them. If you're not happy with the palette once you've used it, perhaps dropped it in a few of these situations. So just to clarify, that's the text. So you want to go through and assign an appropriate color to each text block. Bear in mind the backgrounds change. So on this page here where you've got a dark background, you might choose one of the lighter options. For the headings, you could either keep it consistent or you could do something that stands out to give it a little contrast. Experiment with it. If you're not happy with the selection or there's a color you don't think is working, just come back to your worksheet page and sample something different. Play with it until you're happy. And when you are happy with your selection, please bring that color palette along to the next lesson where we're going to have a look at the frameworks behind our layouts.